This forgotten CBS sitcom won 3 Golden Globes, but was canceled to make room for a show that would change television forever. Behind the smiles of Governor Drinkwater and his daughter JJ lurked tragic personal demons, bizarre casting coincidences, and one of the strangest dog-naming stories in TV history. From secret political lives to heartbreaking endings, these shocking facts reveal the untold story of television's most unusual political family. Fact 1. Canceled to birth a TV legend. The Governor and JJ had the unfortunate distinction of being sacrificed to make room for one of the most groundbreaking shows in television history. In December of 1970, CBS made the decision to cancel the series after just 1 season and a few months into its 2nd season, ending its run with 39 episodes total. The reason for the cancellation was simple but significant. The network needed to clear space on its Wednesday night schedule for a new sitcom called All in the Family, which would premiere in January of 1971 and completely transform American television comedy. At the time, The Governor and JJ was actually performing respectably in the ratings and had even won 3 Golden Globe Awards earlier that year, making its cancellation seem particularly harsh. The show was moved to make room for To Roam with Love, which shifted from Tuesday nights to Wednesday nights, creating a domino effect that ultimately pushed The Governor and JJ off the air entirely. CBS was making space for Norman Lear's controversial new show about a bigoted working-class man named Archie Bunker and his liberal family, a program that would tackle social issues with unprecedented frankness and change the landscape of sitcoms forever. The irony of this scheduling shuffle became even more apparent when you consider that Carroll O'Connor, who would become famous as Archie Bunker, had actually appeared in The Governor and JJ's pilot episode playing a character named Orrin Hacker before the role was recast with Ed Platt. So, in a strange way, the show that replaced The Governor and JJ had already left its mark on the series before it even premiered. To Roam with Love, the show that directly took over The Governor and JJ's time slot, would itself be canceled at the end of the 1970-71 season, making the whole situation even more bittersweet. Fact 2. The future Archie Bunker appeared. First, one of the strangest coincidences in television history involves Carroll O'Connor's brief appearance on The Governor and JJ, before he became one of the most famous actors in American sitcom history. O'Connor played a character named Orrin Hacker in the show's pilot episode, a role that was meant to be recurring as the head of Governor Drinkwater's unnamed political party. However, after that initial appearance, the producers decided to recast the role. And Ed Platt, who was best known for playing the chief on the spy comedy Get Smart, took over the part for the remainder of the series during its 2nd season. What makes this casting change so remarkably ironic is that Carroll O'Connor would go on to star in All in the Family as Archie Bunker, the show that directly caused The Governor and JJ to be canceled. When CBS decided to bring Norman Lear's controversial new sitcom to television in January of 1971, they needed to reshuffle their entire schedule, and The Governor and JJ became the casualty of that programming decision. So the man who had briefly appeared in the show's first episode ended up being the star of the very program that replaced it on the network's schedule. At the time O'Connor filmed his guest appearance on The Governor and JJ, he was still a relatively unknown character actor working in both television and film, taking whatever roles came his way. He had no idea that within months he would be offered the role of a lifetime that would make him a household name and earn him multiple Emmy Awards. The Governor and JJ would become a footnote in television history, while All in the Family would revolutionize the medium and run for 9 successful seasons, making this brief casting overlap one of the most fascinating what-if moments in TV history. Fact 3. Triple Golden Globe victory. The Governor and JJ achieved something truly remarkable at the 27th Golden Globe Awards ceremony held in February of 1970, sweeping 3 major television comedy categories in a clean victory that demonstrated just how much the Hollywood Foreign Press Association loved the show. The series won Best Television Series in the musical or comedy category, while both of its stars took home acting awards, with Dan Dailey winning Best Actor in a television series musical or comedy, and Julie Somers winning Best Actress in a television series musical or comedy. This triple win was especially impressive considering the show had only been on the air for a few months at that point, having premiered in September of 1969. What made Julie Somers' victory even more notable was that she tied with Carol Burnett, who won for The Carol Burnett Show, meaning she was sharing the honor with one of the biggest names in television comedy at the time. For Dan Dailey, this Golden Globe marked a significant achievement in his long career as a song and dance man who had successfully transitioned from movie musicals to television. And it would be the first time the newly created Best TV Actor Musical or Comedy category was awarded to anyone. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association had just split their television acting categories into drama and comedy that year, making Dailey the inaugural winner in his category. Despite this overwhelming recognition from the Golden Globes, the show's success would be short-lived, as it was canceled less than a year later to make room for other programming. The fact that a series could win 3 Golden Globes and still get canceled within months demonstrates how quickly the television landscape was changing in the early 1970s and how awards recognition didn't always translate into long-term survival on the network schedule. Fact 4. The Mystery State Strategy. The producers of The Governor and JJ made a deliberate creative decision to never reveal which Midwestern state governor William Drinkwater actually governed, keeping the location intentionally vague throughout the entire run of the series. This choice was made so that the show could have broader appeal and wouldn't be tied to the specific politics, culture, or stereotypes of any particular state, allowing viewers from anywhere in the country to relate to the stories without feeling like the show was about someone else's home state. The only information given was that it was somewhere in the Midwest, but beyond that general region, the state remained a complete mystery. This mystery state strategy created an interesting production challenge whenever scenes required the use of official state symbols or government imagery. Since the show couldn't use an actual state flag without revealing which state they were supposed to be in, the prop department had to design and create a completely fictional flag bearing a generic governor's seal instead. This custom-made flag appeared throughout the series whenever official state business was being conducted or when the setting required some kind of governmental decoration. If you look closely at the end credits of the show, you can actually see a brief full-screen view of this seal, which simply reads, "The Great Seal of the Governor of the State," without any specific state name attached to it. This approach of keeping the location deliberately ambiguous was relatively unusual for television shows at the time, as most series were either set in clearly identified real locations or fictional towns with specific geographic details. The Governor and JJ chose instead to exist in a kind of political limbo, representing the idea of state government in general rather than any specific state's administration, which gave the writers more flexibility to explore various political situations without worrying about accuracy to any particular state's laws or customs. Fact 5. Real governors made cameos. The Governor and JJ featured an unusual collection of guest stars that you wouldn't typically see on a television sitcom, as actual sitting governors from various states made cameo appearances throughout the show's run. These real-life politicians would show up to exchange a few lines of dialogue with Dan Dailey's fictional Governor Drinkwater, creating a unique blend of reality and fiction that gave the show an extra layer of authenticity. Among the governors who appeared on the series were Robert Docking of Kansas and Dean C. Davis of Vermont, who both took time out from their actual duties running their states to make brief appearances on a CBS comedy show. The presence of these real governors became something of a status symbol among politicians of the era, as getting invited to appear on The Governor and JJ was seen as a mark of distinction and a chance to show a more personable side to the American public. For the show's producers, having actual governors appear alongside their fictional counterpart added credibility to the series and helped sell the idea that Governor Drinkwater was a legitimate political figure operating in the same world as these real elected officials. The cameos were typically lighthearted and non-controversial, with the visiting governors usually just dropping by for a friendly chat or to bring a gift from their home state. In one memorable episode, Governor Dean C. Davis of Vermont brings Governor Drinkwater some maple syrup and extends an invitation to come skiing in his state, a perfectly Vermont-appropriate gesture that played into regional stereotypes in a gentle way. These appearances were brief enough that the governors didn't need any real acting ability, but they still required the politicians to be comfortable on camera and willing to play along with the show's comedic tone, making their participation a fascinating footnote in the history of politicians appearing in entertainment media. Fact 6. Political opposites in real life. Julie Summers spent her time on The Governor and JJ playing Jennifer Jo Drinkwater, a young liberal woman who frequently debated political issues with her more conservative father and championed progressive causes throughout the series. The character of JJ was written as part of the late 1960s trend of featuring young, hip, socially conscious characters who represented the generation gap and the changing values of American youth. However, in a twist that would have surprised many viewers at the time, Summers herself was actually quite involved in Republican Party politics behind the scenes, working mostly out of the public eye to support conservative causes and candidates. This created an amusing disconnect between the actress and the character she portrayed every week on television, as Summers had to convincingly argue for liberal positions and express progressive viewpoints that were often the opposite of her own personal political beliefs. The fact that she was able to play JJ so effectively, despite holding different political views, is a testament to her abilities as an actress and her professionalism in separating her personal opinions from her work. Many actors throughout television history have played characters whose politics don't align with their own. But it's particularly interesting in this case because the show was specifically built around political debates and generational differences in ideology. Summers kept her political involvement relatively private during the show's run, focusing her public image on her acting career rather than her partisan activities. This was probably a smart decision given that the show was trying to appeal to audiences across the political spectrum and didn't want to alienate viewers on either side. After her acting career, Summers would go on to serve in public positions, including time on the California Judicial Performance Commission, demonstrating that her interest in politics and governance extended well beyond her work on The Governor and JJ. Fact 7. The dog that named itself. One of the most charming and unusual additions to The Governor and JJ came during the later episodes when the Drinkwater family adopted a basset hound with sad, soulful eyes that quickly became a beloved member of the household. The dog was introduced in an episode that aired in February of 1970, and the story of how it got its name was one of the cleverest plot devices the writers came up with during the show's run. When the stray basset hound first followed Governor Drinkwater home, the family had no idea what to call it or who it belonged to, so they began the process of trying to figure out the dog's background and find its original owner. The breakthrough came when someone in the household addressed William Drinkwater using his official title of Governor, and the dog immediately barked in response, wagging its tail and acting like it recognized the word. After this happened several times, the family realized that the dog had actually been named Governor by its previous owner, and it was responding to hearing what it thought was its own name being called. The family started calling the dog Gov as a shortened nickname, which created an ongoing source of gentle comedy throughout the remaining episodes as characters would have conversations where it wasn't always immediately clear whether they were talking about the actual governor or the dog. Eventually, the original owner was tracked down, but it turned out that the basset hound was much happier living with the Drinkwater family than going back to its previous home. So the owner generously agreed to let Gov stay at the governor's mansion permanently. This allowed the dog to become a recurring character for the rest of the series, adding an extra layer of warmth and humor to the show's family dynamic. Fact 8. Get Smart Connection. The Governor and JJ had strong creative ties to one of the most popular spy comedies of the 1960s, as the show was created and produced by Leonard Stern and Arne Sultan, the same team that was simultaneously working on Get Smart during the same period. This meant that both shows shared a similar sense of humor and comedic sensibility, even though one was about bumbling secret agents and the other was about a widowed governor and his daughter navigating political life. The connection between the two series went beyond just having the same producers, as they also shared some of the same writing staff and production crew who would move back and forth between the two shows. The most visible link between The Governor and JJ and Get Smart came when Ed Platt joined the cast of The Governor and JJ during its second season in 1970. Platt was already famous for playing the chief on Get Smart, the long-suffering boss of Agent 86, who spent most of his time dealing with Maxwell Smart's incompetence and trying to keep the spy organization running smoothly. On The Governor and JJ, Platt took over the recurring role of Orrin Hacker, the head of Governor Drinkwater's political party, after Carol O'Connor had played the character in the pilot episode and then moved on to other projects. For viewers who were fans of Get Smart, seeing Ed Platt show up on The Governor and JJ would have been a delightful surprise, as he brought the same kind of authoritative yet slightly exasperated energy to his political party boss character that he brought to his role as the chief. Get Smart ended its run in 1970, the same year Platt joined The Governor and JJ, so the timing worked out perfectly for him to transition from one Stern and Sultan production to another. Fact 9. Dan Dailey's tragic personal life. Behind Dan Dailey's cheerful on-screen persona as Governor Drinkwater was a man who struggled with serious mental health challenges throughout his entire career in Hollywood. Dailey had been dealing with depression and alcoholism for years, issues that were largely hidden from the public during the height of his fame as a song and dance man in movie musicals during the 1940s and 50s. His co-star Betty Grable, who worked with him on several films, knew that beneath his happy-go-lucky exterior was someone dealing with intense emotional turmoil, describing him as a cauldron of seething emotions that he kept carefully concealed from most people around him. The breaking point came in 1951 after Dailey finished filming the drama I Can Get It For You Wholesale, when his mental state deteriorated so severely that he checked himself into the prestigious Menninger Clinic in Kansas for treatment. He stayed at the psychiatric facility for 4 months, receiving help for what he would later describe as a complete breakdown that had been building for years. What made Dailey's situation unusual for Hollywood at the time was his decision to be completely open and honest about his mental health struggles, rather than hiding them or making excuses for his absence from the industry. After returning to Hollywood, Dailey spoke candidly to reporters, including columnist Hedda Hopper, about his experience, explaining that work alone wasn't the problem, but that when work becomes the only thing you have in your life and you bury yourself in it 24 hours a day, that's when it becomes dangerous. His willingness to discuss his mental health treatment publicly was remarkably progressive for the 1950s, when such issues were heavily stigmatized and rarely acknowledged openly by celebrities. Fact 10. A father's devastating loss. The most heartbreaking tragedy in Dan Dailey's life occurred on July 1, 1975, when his only son, Dan Dailey III, took his own life at the age of 29. The younger Dailey had been struggling with psychological issues, and on that day he walked outside of a hospital, pulled out a gun, and shot himself in the side of the head, dying instantly. Although a note was reportedly found on him at the time of his death, its contents have never been publicly released, and there has been speculation over the years that he may have received devastating health news at the hospital that contributed to his decision, though this has never been confirmed. For Dan Dailey, who had already battled his own mental health challenges throughout his life, the loss of his son was an overwhelming blow that he never truly recovered from. Those who knew him said that after this tragedy, Dailey turned increasingly to alcohol and became bitter and withdrawn, losing much of the warmth and charm that had defined his personality during his earlier years in show business. His friend Betty Grable, who had been his frequent co-star in movie musicals during the 1940s and 50s, had passed away in 1973 at the age of 56. And according to some accounts, Dailey had taken her death very hard as well, with actress Alice Faye claiming that Dailey had always been in love with Grable. The combination of personal losses and his ongoing struggles with alcoholism made Dailey's final years extremely difficult. And by the time he was working on The Governor and JJ in the late 1960s, he was already dealing with significant emotional pain that would only deepen as the 1970s progressed and more tragedies accumulated in his personal life. Fact 11. The director who shaped sitcom history. Among the directors who worked on The Governor and JJ was Jay Sandrich, a talented filmmaker who directed several episodes of the series but was about to become one of the most important and influential directors in the history of television comedy. Sandrich had already established himself as a skilled sitcom director through his work on shows like Get Smart and The Dick Van Dyke Show, but his career was about to reach an entirely new level when he was offered the chance to direct a new show that would premiere in 1970, the same year The Governor and JJ was ending its run. That new show was The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and Sandrich would end up directing an incredible 119 episodes of the series, including both the very first episode and the emotional final episode that remains one of the most beloved series finales in television history. His work on The Mary Tyler Moore Show established him as the go-to director for character-driven sitcoms that balanced humor with genuine emotion and realistic relationships. Sandrich would go on to direct the pilot episodes of numerous other classic sitcoms, including The Bob Newhart Show, WKRP in Cincinnati, Benson, and The Golden Girls, essentially shaping the look and feel of an entire era of television comedy. Over the course of his career, Sandrich won 5 Emmy Awards and was nominated for 10 more, cementing his reputation as one of the finest comedy directors in the medium. He was also known as a generous mentor to younger directors and had a keen eye for casting, famously suggesting that Betty White and Rue McClanahan switch their originally assigned roles on The Golden Girls. Sandrich was inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame in 2020, just a year before his death in 2021 at the age of 89. Fact 12. Carol Burnett's Golden Globe tie. When Julie Somers won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a television series, musical, or comedy at the 27th Golden Globe Awards in February of 1970, she didn't win it alone. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association declared a tie, with Somers sharing the honor with Carol Burnett, who won for her groundbreaking variety show, The Carol Burnett Show. This meant that a relatively unknown actress in her first major television role was standing on equal footing with one of the most beloved and respected performers in American television, a comedian who had already become a household name and cultural icon. The tie was particularly significant because 1970 was the first year that the Golden Globes had split their television acting categories into separate drama and comedy divisions, meaning both Somers and Burnett were among the very first recipients of this newly created Best TV Actress Musical or Comedy Award. Carol Burnett would go on to dominate this category over the years, eventually winning 5 Golden Globes total for The Carol Burnett Show out of 12 nominations, making her the most awarded performer in the history of the category. The Golden Globes would later create a special honorary award named after Burnett to recognize career achievement in television, making her the first recipient of the Carol Burnett Award in 2019. For Julie Somers, sharing this moment with Carol Burnett represented the peak of her time on The Governor and JJ, and remains one of the most notable achievements of her career. While Somers would go on to have steady work in television, and would receive another Golden Globe nomination years later for her role on Matlock, this 1970 win, alongside one of comedy's greatest legends, would always stand as a special milestone in her acting journey. Fact 13. Dan Dailey's final curtain. Dan Dailey's performing career came to a tragic end in 1977 when he suffered a serious injury while appearing in a stage production of The Odd Couple in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. During one of the performances, Dailey took a fall that resulted in a broken hip, an injury that would prove to be far more serious than anyone initially realized at the time. The injury was severe enough that Dailey was confined to a wheelchair, but remarkably, he continued to perform in the play despite his physical limitations, demonstrating the same dedication to his craft that had defined his entire career as a song and dance man. The broken hip required surgery to repair, and Dailey underwent a hip replacement procedure in an attempt to restore his mobility and quality of life. However, complications arose following the surgery, and Dailey also developed anemia, a condition where the body doesn't have enough healthy red blood cells to carry adequate oxygen to tissues. The combination of surgical complications and anemia proved too much for his body to handle, and on October 16, 1978, Dan Dailey passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 62. His death came just 3 years after losing his only son to suicide, meaning his final years were marked by both physical suffering and profound emotional grief. Dailey was buried at Forest, Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, and according to reports, he was laid to rest wearing his favorite pink hunting jacket, a detail that reflected his lifelong love of horses and equestrian sports. His friend and fellow performer John Raitt sang at his funeral, providing a fitting musical farewell to a man who had spent decades entertaining audiences with his singing and dancing talents on both film and television. Fact 14. The show that connected two eras. The Governor and JJ premiered in September of 1969 at a fascinating moment in television history when the medium was caught between two very different approaches to comedy. The show arrived during what many critics call the transition period between traditional family-friendly sitcoms that avoided controversy and the new wave of socially relevant comedies that would tackle real-world issues head-on. The Governor and JJ tried to position itself somewhere in the middle of these two approaches, featuring generational conflicts between a conservative father and his liberal daughter, while still maintaining the gentle, non-threatening tone of earlier sitcoms. This attempt to bridge both worlds meant that the show often touched on contemporary political and social topics through the debates between Governor Drinkwater and JJ, but it never went as deep or became as confrontational as the shows that would follow it. The series belonged to the same trend as other programs from the 1969 to 1970 season like Julia and Room 222, which tried to address modern issues while still keeping things light and broadly appealing to audiences who weren't necessarily ready for more challenging material. The show's creators, Leonard Stern and Arnie Sultan, came from the world of joke-driven comedy through their work on Get Smart, so The Governor and JJ maintained a focus on humor over social commentary. Just months after The Governor and JJ was canceled, Norman Lear's All in the Family would premiere and completely change the rules about what sitcoms could discuss and how honestly they could portray controversial subjects. In retrospect, The Governor and JJ represents one of the last attempts to make political comedy palatable to everyone before television comedy split into more defined camps and became willing to risk offending some viewers in pursuit of greater authenticity and social impact. Fact 15. Lost to history. The Governor and JJ has suffered one of the strangest fates of any award-winning television series, essentially vanishing from the cultural memory despite its impressive achievements during its brief run. The show won 3 Golden Globe Awards, ran for 39 episodes across 2 seasons, and featured notable guest stars and talented creators. Yet today, it's almost completely forgotten and rarely mentioned, even in comprehensive histories of television sitcoms from the era. Unlike many other shows from the late 1960s and early 1970s that have been rediscovered through syndication, streaming services, or DVD releases, The Governor and JJ remains largely inaccessible to modern audiences. Most episodes of the series are not available through any legal streaming platform or home video release, making it nearly impossible for curious television historians or fans of classic sitcoms to watch the show and form their own opinions about its quality and place in TV history. A few episodes have surfaced on YouTube over the years, uploaded by collectors who have access to old recordings, but these are rare and often of poor quality. CBS Media Ventures currently owns the distribution rights to the program, but there appears to be little interest in bringing it back into circulation or making it available to contemporary viewers. The show's disappearance is particularly puzzling when you consider that it even inspired its own Gold Key comic book during its original run, suggesting it had achieved a reasonable level of popularity and cultural penetration at the time. CBS did air reruns of selected episodes during the summer of 1972, indicating the network saw some value in the property even after cancellation. But after that brief revival, the show simply faded away and has remained in obscurity ever since, becoming a footnote known mainly to devoted students of television history.